Greetings. We are back live again with Meridian World News Weekly Report. I'm Kasabez Makma.
Peace and love. My name is Shanae Mobo.
It's good to see all of you today. Hopefully, we can give you guys a little bit more inside information or details on what's going on. Obviously, the big story right now is no longer the coronavirus. Yep, they even ran the coronavirus out of town because now the big story is George Floyd, the protest, the rioting, and the looting that all that's happening in the aftermath of his kid being, murdered by the police. So we're going to take you right into some footage. We have a lot to show right now. Here's some footage from people on the ground in Minneapolis and other cities.
A very different scene here today compared to the carnage of last night. You can see the fire engines there behind me. Not just here, though, but all across America. The death of George Floyd has touched a very, very raw nerve. A moment, perhaps, for a president to call for calm and unity, you might think. But on Twitter today, Donald Trump is instead criticizing the Democratic mayor and governor here and calling for them, he says, to get tough and fight. He has also got the Pentagon reportedly on standby to send military police here this evening with just 4 hours notice. And while, Matt, the president is right to say that there have been organized groups who are simply determined to cause destruction, you can certainly see that all around me with these burnt out buildings. I have to say, though, that the majority of people that we spoke to here last night said that they came in peace in the memory of George Floyd. And that they are here to rage against what they see as centuries of discrimination and mistreatment of Black Americans at the hands of white police. And when you ask them what it will take for all this to stop, they simply say that they want justice. No justice, they say, no peace.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
For the 4th night in a row, an angry mob of protesters marched towards police, chanting the last words of George Floyd, the black man who died at the hands of white officers.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
They fired tear gas, but they marched on. And as the curfew time of 8 p.m. came and went, the National Guard abandoned their positions, but the protesters held theirs and pushed on.
From the area immediately. If you continue to obstruct, resist, you will be arrested.
So there were 4 cops present when George was murdered. One of them was finally arrested today after days of protest, but we're still waiting for the other 3. If you murder someone, or if you stand by as a police officer and let your coworker murder someone, you need to be arrested because Black Lives Matter and you can't just kill people like that.
As night fell, the chants descended into chaos, arson and looting. These protesters using a crowbar to force open an ATM.
It's the 4th night of protests here. It began peacefully, but if anybody thought the arrest of a police officer for the murder of George Floyd would calm things down, take a look at this scene behind me.
A car repair yard was set on fire, the owner desperately trying to save vehicles, backing them out of the flames. As a furious mob demanded that they let it burn in the name of justice.
We're not asking for justice no more. We're demanding justice.
What do you want?
We want justice, not just now, but for when I have Black and brown babies and when they have Black and brown babies.
It's a little bit crazy because we're out here trying to show them that we're angry. I might not agree with the rioting and the looting, but I can say that people are showing their anger. They're frustrated. What's his name?
Yeah, justice. I mean, this is not just about George Floyd. It's about everything that's happened in our world. The government has failed us. The police has failed us. Corporations have failed us. It's time for them to hear us.
They made themselves heard in New York, a city still in lockdown. But what started out peacefully quickly became ugly as police suddenly turned on the crowd, beating demonstrators with batons and using pepper spray in response to water bottles being hurled by the crowd. Dozens were arrested. As they were in Atlanta, where crowds set fire to police cars and attacked the CNN building as the governor declared a state of emergency.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker. Something's on fire.
In Detroit, police said shots were fired from a vehicle into a crowd of demonstrators, killing a 19-year-old man. And chaos even came to Donald Trump's front door. The White House was briefly placed in lockdown as the mob descended. One man even daring to climb a government building to spray his rage on the side of the wall. In all, 21 states witnessed violence, and beneath the fire and the fury, the same age-old message. In Minneapolis, the epicenter of America's pain, the National Guard gradually returned to the streets as fire trucks attempted to douse the blaze. But there's no dousing the anger and hurt here.
I swear to God.
It's in the air and written on the walls.
So yeah, very disturbing and stirring imagery.
Yes.
This is what's happening in our world right now, and this is just a taste of it. We're going to get into some more of what's been happening here in the Chicago area as well. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times, showing protests in Chicago. So this is the Chicago area again, downtown Chicago, this past Saturday. We're gonna see. There's still, suddenly nobody's talking about COVID anymore. If COVID is what they say it is, we're gonna see some dramatic, a very dramatic situation, dramatic increase in the number of COVID cases in the next couple of weeks. But let's pay attention to that as well.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's very, very interesting. It's like the whole COVID-19 pandemic is no more. Like that never happened. It's more like our focus has now been diverted to something else. And we don't even, COVID-19 what? COVID-19 who? Mask. You can see a lot of people out here protesting with no mask on, no gloves or anything like that. So yeah, we're definitely going to see the results of that in a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah, very interesting, and it shows how much people are just easily distracted nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coining the phrase zombie apocalypse, the new hashtag zombie apocalypse, because it looks like a lot of people out here just kind of acting without thinking, and just going with the norms of whatever their political associations or religious affiliations are advocating for.
Yeah, not thinking about the longevity of their actions, because a lot of people that were looting and setting things on fire, some of those things were in their own neighborhoods. So how are your parents, how are your kids gonna go shopping for their next meal if everything's burned down?
Yeah, it's becoming a survival issue for real. And if things keep going like this, it's gonna be, we're gonna see. We got to be ready for whatever type of chaos might ensue. Um, I'm over here in Hammond. They managed to somehow keep the riots out of here for the most part, but right across the border in Calumet City, yesterday they really apparently tore up the River Oaks Mall, and they basically were not even letting people into the suburb at that time at all. I barely made it home. Aside from the protests that have been happening nationwide, there's been protests all over the world. We're going to take a look at some other protests also here in New Zealand. We'll show something from Calgary and Calgary in Canada. Goodness, but very large protests worldwide happening over the killing of George Floyd, which shows that it's not just about George Floyd, but it's really about a bigger issue that we're seeing of global justice. Like the young man said in the other video, he wants justice for himself, but also for future generations. Because it's a generational issue. Let's go ahead and see the video. Very large protests happening in New Zealand. In addition to New Zealand, we had large protests in Calgary. I'm hearing about protests happening in Berlin, protests happening in the African, I forget the African country, but an African country too. One of the things that I saw that was very, very touching to me in a weird way, there's this mural of a couple brothers in Syria who did a mural on a wall of a bombed building. You guys might not know, the situation in Syria right now, but look, if you could enlarge that photo, these brothers are sitting on straight rubble. As you can see, this building is totally bombed out, and he's done a mural for George Floyd. Like, people in this situation, living in a state like this, showing solidarity, taking the time to show consideration and pay tribute to what's happening here in the U.S. To me, it's touching, but I have to feel some kind of sense of shame, because I feel like really those of us here in the U.S. who, supposedly have more of a voice on the international stage, I didn't see us speaking out when all of this was happening in Syria. And yet they're doing, what they can, at least to speak out for what's happening here in the United States.
Which is highly appreciated, since we've been, going at this thing with really few allies. So just to see someone in a whole nother country paying homage and tribute to what's going on over here, it is really touching.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna skip the footage from the other locations, but we did see some very interesting stuff with these protests. We all know what happened with George Floyd. We all know that people are upset. We all know that people are out protesting. But we also have seen in the last couple of days, the riots, the looting, and all this. Now, aside from people just being angry, however, and, that's understandable, you know, and I can just say we can understand. Anyone should be able to understand people who are angry, lash out. People who are desperate, lash out. People who feel like they have no other option, lash out. But we're also seeing in some cases where people who may not have the same reason are also adding to the chaos, fueling the chaos even. And that's not to speak it, you know, we're seeing a lot of whites, for example, and this is not all whites. You know, of course, there's some whites who are standing in solidarity with the movement just to bring justice. But there's some people who are acting as agents for chaos. So we're going to see a little bit from that too. Again, this is from Instagram.
Let's switch the audio and see how it plays out.
Breaking news, violent protest.
What you're looking at is the unraveling of the civil society.
Criminals and thugs.
And they're raising hell and they're destroying property.
These idiotic thugs, rioting and looting, are hurting their own people.
Wild animals burning buildings down.
Especially if they know the media's all there, right? Got the cameras on everyone. It's become its own reality show.
Who acts like that towards a police officer?
Think for yourself. Don't let racist media color your perceptions. Demand fairness in media coverage. Tell the media to put an end to calling black people thugs.
This is America. Don't got you slipping now. Look how I'm living now.
Please pause it. So the first video, excuse me, that first video actually just is to address the way there's slanted media coverage of these protests and riots. And again, you know, this is without having an opinion, you know, putting in any opinion one way or another on the riots themselves, the reason for them. But you can see the difference between how black people rioting versus white people rioting is addressed in the media.
Oh yeah, which is a total difference. When they usually, you know, put that footage up of the white people rioting, it's more like, oh, those kids, you know, they're just having fun. Oh, they're excited. Oh, nothing to see here.
Out of control or whatever.
Yeah, even if they're setting their things on fire, you know, literally fighting police. It's still like, oh, they're just having fun. They're excited about their, you know, sports game, the loss, or you know, it's always an excuse as opposed to, you know, what's happening now with the riots. And it's just like, oh, those thugs and they're burning down this and wild animals. And it's a totally different narrative.
And so that last video, just to be clear, was it put sound bites of, you know, coverage of black people rioting and put it on, you know, showing white people rioting and how it would look, you know, how it kind of slants the way that people may look at or, you know, kind of understand what's happening, the judgments that people make. And that's why we keep saying, you know, use your critical mind when analyzing whatever we're seeing. Don't just go with, you know, your first mind or your first reaction to whatever someone's showing you, because you don't know what type of agenda they may have. But speaking of blacks rioting and vandalizing and looting in this situation, there's some videos to show that mostly it's not just black people. There's obviously black people rioting and looting too, but you also see a lot of that was instigated by whites at protests that were originally supposed to be peaceful. This video here took place at a peaceful protest, and it's a reporter played the sound of some gunshots from his phones, which effectively ruined the protest because people thought actually there was shooting going on.
what it was. You did that on purpose. You just destroyed it. You destroyed a peaceful protest. Why did you do that? An innocent man died. He had a family. He had parents. And this is the truth. This man was part about.
All right, next video, please. You can see things are being done. It's not always the way it looks.
Assemblywoman Diana Richardson, I'm an elected official, and they just pepper sprayed me for no reason. And if anyone knows the law, trust me, I know it. We were only peacefully assembling. And one of the police officers, Clinton, badge 17324. Give me the badge number. 17324. 17324. And her partner literally put their fist up to fight us. We're not here to fight. We have suffered enough abuse. We have suffered enough by law enforcement around this country, only to come out here and peacefully protest to have our rights violated by the NYPD. Run that story.
And this next video is going to show some more, like you see, vandalism by whites, even blacks protesting, the whites vandalizing, you know, over this kind of thing. It's more of a, I guess, it's about Black Lives Matter, and it shows whites showing, writing Black Lives Matter on the wall of a Starbucks. So that would be the
Yeah, they put them there. This the setup. They put them there on purpose, y'all know where we at. They gonna set them on right up on the route. Y'all know what building this is right here. I ain't even gonna say what name it is. Hey, where do them bricks go to? Where do them bricks go to? Where do them bricks go to? We gotta do better. Ain't no damn gotta do better. Ain't no damn construction around here. I see. Ain't no damn construction around here. You just gonna set a pallet of bricks right there. Oh, okay. Listen, I did jury duty 3 months ago. Y'all don't keep no bricks right there. Do better.
So where do you think those bricks came from, y'all?
Look like a setup to me.
There's a pile of bricks and a building with windows.
Right. In a prestige downtown area. It's not like this was, you know, out in the country somewhere, you know, or anything like that. This is in front of a building that was well kept, well maintained. What is the purpose of the bricks being there all of a sudden? You know, It's not like they were there for weeks, months, and it just so happens to be a protest. And now we can use these bricks that are already here. It's like they were planted.
Right. So you can see there's an organized element to this whole thing. Somebody put something there on purpose. And I was hearing about this, you know, in different places. But this, you know, it's not a small task to take a huge pallet full of bricks like that. Like, you have to imagine, what kind of vehicle do you need to transport those big bricks? You need a team of people to unload those bricks and put them there on the corner, and it's going to take time. You have to be there for a minute, so people are going to see you in the middle of downtown offloading bricks off of your truck. Just saying, it's a very suspect activity.
It's kind of like they're trying to invoke, you know, some type of action from the people down there. You know, you're already upset, and we just so happen to place some bricks right here for you. You know, you're welcome. That's what it seems like to me. Like it was just planted there so strategically to incite what was already going on.
Or, you know, make matters worse. And you can see, you know, the spillover of that taking place over the last day or so, with the looting that spread out of downtown into other areas. I saw photos, man, of different. I even saw in person, first of all, yesterday, a Boost Mobile cell phone store. You know, it's got the big metal gate that you pull down. That gate had been lifted up, obviously not by the shopkeepers, you know, not the owners of the store. and the window was busted out. People were running in and out of there and grabbing cell phones and stuff. Who's running around breaking these stores open? I saw something on showing, I think it was from 47th Street, like a City Sports, and it was like the corner of the building had been like ripped up. Like you need to have some kind of a big machine to totally rip the side of the building off so people can break in. So these kinds of things are happening. We don't know who's really behind everything. Here's one clue. There's a man called George Soros, and if you haven't heard of him, we've been hearing, there's been word going out for years that this man is fueling a lot of these radical left organizations and what would you call it? Protest groups.
And you get a check directly from Soros.
Directly from Soros.
That's incredible.
Signed by him. He even invited me to lunch.
Does he sign it in blood?
He said if I'm willing to like gather some more friends, I can get paid like twice as much for every friend that I gather and kind of set up a pyramid scheme.
And you can get rich just based on protesting for Soros, right?
I already have, yeah. So basically, I've been organizing most of the protesting that you see in California so far, and it's all due to being paid. If I wasn't paid, I would be like stealing.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I just wish more people knew about it because then we could actually like start a movement.
Okay, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
And if you show the next video, this next video shows some white protesters paying off some black people to do, some vandalize basically.
We're building barricades. Go get everything you can find. Go get everything you can find. These are the boys right here. This is the team. There's more stuff that we can put out here. Hey, there's 3 picnic tables up here. There's a couple picnic tables up here. Come on, y'all.
Very interesting, right? So you know what they say when you trying to figure out what's going on, you follow the money. So there's this isn't just people anger or even some people just being opportunistic. It's not just people being desperate, but then there's also people out here with an agenda, paying people to cause chaos and mayhem in these cities.
Oh yeah, and I feel like it's very sad because it's there's a reason that people are protesting. There was a real injustice that happened that's been happening for a very long time, and I feel like it's very sad that people are, hijacking what's happening for their own selfish gain and their own selfish needs. To put their own messages out there and make it seems like it's under the Black Lives Matter emblem, but it's not at all.
We've got one more video. This is the one I thought we were going to show earlier of the Starbucks being vandalized. So this is at the point where the protests started peacefully, and then people started vandalizing like this.
I can't believe that. Now they circling. See them, look. I want you to know this is not. Don't police people's way. Let me tell you this. This is not a black woman who's putting Black Lives Matter. I just want you to know that when. Right, but y'all doing that for us, and we ain't asked you to do that. Listen. Don't spray stuff on here when they gonna blame black people for this, and black people didn't do it. There's some black person, but if we wanted you to do it, we would have asked. They not gonna show y'all faces when they see that on their building. They gonna blame that on us. Y'all are part of the problem. News come on, they gonna say we did that. We didn't do that.
It's a lot of that happening too.
Yeah, I'm gonna, for some reason.
I'm coming on here because I want to make sure everybody knows something in Chicago. So if you don't know, I live in downtown Chicago. I live in the Streeterville neighborhood, which is about 2 blocks from the Chicago River and a couple blocks from Lake Michigan, and I'm right by Michigan Avenue where all the shops are.
Play this on my
So
phone.
I just took my dog Russell on a walk, not knowing, unfortunately, that there was protesting going on Michigan Avenue. And as I walked down Michigan Avenue, I saw a lot of storefronts that were smashed, that were vandalized, that were graffitied. And I want everyone to hear this because I am not making a political statement. I am telling you the truth. And this is true information because I saw it with my own eyes, that every person right now in Chicago that is smashing windows and is graffitiing is a white person. And white people, I need to tell you this right now. Stop fucking doing that. I don't know why we are so angry, but what we are doing is ruining this entire thing for everyone, because now everybody thinks that the Black Lives Matter movement is about vandalism and rioting, and it is not. What?
First and foremost, rest in peace, George Floyd. Let's get into this.
Excuse me.
We really gotta have this conversation.
So, there you have it, eyewitness from Chicago. So, you can see, and I saw another brother post from Facebook. He was saying that many of the people who were out there protesting, the different places he went around the city, were whites, in Hyde Park and other areas, Bronzeville and so on. So, and these are areas outside of downtown yesterday that were being, protests being, I guess, instigated by whites as well. So you can see once those stores were broken into, however, a lot of people, just opportunistically going in there, stealing, looting, taking whatever they want to take. We saw a lot of that. Here's an example here in Chicago from Stony Island Avenue, strip mall here.
Toward solutions. My man got all the dog food. My man got all the dog food. I mean, everything. Look, they just flying out the back door of this Family Dollar with everything. They got carts, water, toilet tissue, diapers, Oreos. My man came out with a bag of Oreos. It's pure American normalcy. I'm gonna even stop saying it's madness. This is normalcy. This is like the norm in America. You just now seeing it externally, where people feel like they have an excuse to let out their inner beast.
So I don't know really who takes the moral high ground in the situation. Do you give the moral high ground to Trump? I don't think so. You give the moral high ground to the police. You give the moral high ground to Black Lives Matter. Who takes the moral high ground in the situation? Personally, it's hard to say, it's hard to say a statement on this because the issue runs so deep within what's happening in this country as a whole. The issue runs so deep. As you can see, this is much deeper than George Floyd, much deeper than Black Lives Matter even.
Oh, yeah.
We've been on quarantine for the last 2.5 months. People, the frustration from that, the desperation from that, communities that have been, already in bad shape. Now, a lot of people losing their jobs, a lot of people out of work, a lot of people unemployed, a lot of people, even more in a bad situation than before. And then all of a sudden, oh, they done busted the windows in all of these stores. Hey, take advantage.
Right. It's a very interesting mixing pot, of a recipe for disaster. We have years of oppression when it comes to Black people, months of quarantine, because of the pandemic, and then it's just bubbling over, police brutality over police brutality. Well, at least, different images of it being portrayed all throughout the media, everything like that. And it just came to a boiling point.
Mm-hmm. And you might recall the last week or two, I've been noticing and sharing on social media, sharing on this weekly report. You can see where this police brutality, police killing Black people is happening all the time. It's, I don't think you can say a month goes by and it's not something good, goes down, or probably multiple things. Only sometimes do we see it. And we saw the brother in Georgia, I believe, Ahmaud Arbery, was killed by those whites, and there were several other things. Just all of a sudden, we're hearing about all at the same time, and then this became the straw that broke the camel's back with George Floyd, and it went viral. Why now, on the heels of this coronavirus catastrophe, are we now having this situation happen? Where you can see clearly, or maybe not even clearly, but there's evidence to show organized efforts to disrupt and generate chaos. What is the real agenda here? And we're seeing, and I've been saying for months, I've been saying that we're going to see this agenda. There's an agenda that's being rolled out in front of us, and we're seeing it unfold. We're going to see what the real agenda is, and I hope that by the time it really becomes clear, it's not too late to try to stop it, because it's something bigger than what we're really being allowed to see.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's up to us as a people to really, keep our heads level in it, because I see a lot of people just out, doing what they think is right, or expressing themselves, or, not saying that they're not right or anything like that. I'm not really saying that anybody's right or wrong in the situation. I'm just saying that maybe there's more going on here, and maybe there's someone trying to dictate how people react to things. That's why a lot of this information is coming out now, especially since we've been on lockdown for so long, and it's been happening repeatedly anyway. And then now it's like a bombardance of all of this media on, violence and police brutality, and it just makes you wonder, is this being fed to us for a reason?
So this is the time to be, strategic, be intelligent, be calm, be thoughtful, and know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because long term, looting, taking all the goods that you can out of these stores and stuff, breaking windows or whatever, you might feel like you're expressing yourself. It remains to be seen if there's really going to be some changes governmentally from this, and hopefully, I can say hopefully there are, but honestly speaking, we have to be honest about the situation we're in here in the United States. This is a system that has never worked in the interests of Black people. So if you're a Black person in this country, please remember there's a place that you come from. It's a place that our ancestors come from. This place here is controlled by people who don't care about us, who just see us as a human resource, who see us as a statistic. This has been proven over and over again for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we have a home that we come from. This isn't it. This is just a place where we just woke up one day and we're here. And I really would implore you guys, this is becoming a more and more compelling argument for me by the day of why it's more, it just seems like a more and more intelligent decision to get up out of this mess, to get up out of this place that is clearly imploding on itself and get back home to Africa.
Oh yeah, with the quickness. If all of this wasn't happening, with COVID-19, I feel like, yeah, a lot of people will see this broad, as clear as day and be trying to, get out of here as soon as possible, because it's just it's depleting as we speak. It's just dilapidating right before our very eyes, and it's being shown that this is not a place for us, and this is not a place for our well-being. It's kind of like we come last. It took all of this for us to even have some type of representation, or people saying, oh, what are they so mad about? Because people are being killed over and over and over again, and it took for riots to happen for someone to even acknowledge that this is happening for that reason. And so and a lot of people aren't even acknowledging that that's happening for this reason. They're just saying, oh, they're rioting, oh, they're looting, and not really shining a light on why any of this is even taking place.
Absolutely. And so if you don't have your passport, I would highly suggest that you go ahead and put your passport application in, because if you haven't been paying attention, we don't know what kind of travel restrictions may be coming down the pipeline in the next few months here regarding, just as a result of COVID-19. And while now we've been kind of like distracted now on the other side by something else, there's legislation probably coming about that. Like, okay, if you need to travel, they've been talking about these immunity passports that you may need to travel, you may need to enter your workplace, just so people can feel like they're safe, which will end up forcing people to take vaccines and things like this. So don't forget this is still going on. I know everyone's talking about George Floyd, the protests, the riots, the looting, and all this, but don't forget what's going on with COVID too.
Mm-hmm.
We have another video for you guys, and we're running out of time today, so we're gonna go ahead and keep it brief. I want to get to our last video on the docket here. Trump has, and I think it may be the other one. Trump had a briefing with the media. I don't know exactly. It was at the White House a few days ago. Okay, this is before things really got bad with the protests and so on. That's something with social media that we've all been noticing. Hopefully, if you're paying attention, you're noticing that there's been a lot more than normally censorship on platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, censorship of the posts that people can make. And nowadays it's like certain things, if you're not talking about COVID-19 from the mainstream narrative, you easily can get your video flagged and banned as being false content. Now, these platforms such as YouTube or whatever have always had content that could arguably be very false, misleading, or even dangerous. This is nothing new, but now with COVID, people have taken it to another level, of saying people should not be able to look at certain perspectives regarding the pandemic, or so-called pandemic. It's sort of an unprecedented move. And what that does is it really sets a precedent for censorship, which basically is to say that if you don't agree with what's being said one way or another, you want to present another perspective that has been banned, you get banned on social media. Now, think about this. Who decides what gets banned and what doesn't get banned? It's just the platform itself. It's just the owners of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and so on that decide which kind of media they're going to allow and what they're not going to allow. And so that already is an issue. You know, we already know we don't own these platforms, right? We don't own them. But at the same time, people are using them and they become like public forums that people rely on to be able to communicate and be able to get information. And when that information begins to be filtered, which actually has been happening for some time, because as we know, it's not everything that we're going to see on our timeline. A lot of times Facebook is telling us, YouTube is telling us what they think we want to see. See, so we're only going to see the perspective that that they're saying we want to see, but now they're taking it another level to where even if you're looking for something, you want to see something, they're not going to allow you to see it. So recently, Donald Trump and you know, his folks over there at the White House have been fighting back against some of the censorship. So we're going to see the Attorney General making a statement on that. Recently, he signed, was supposed to have signed an executive order to kind of stop these social media companies from what they're doing with the censorship. Is the video not playing? Uh-oh. So while the brother gets the video online, what are your thoughts on that, sister?
I just have a question. What happened to freedom of speech? Is that not a thing anymore? Because it's a lot of people. Well, it's a lot of media sites that does censor what you can say and things like that. And what I've seen personally is that they censor, they favor, you know, other people's content more than others, or different races of content. So if you speak out, like you said, against the status quo, it's just, you know, you're being censored all the way around the board. And it just makes me think, what happened to, you know, freedom of speech? Is that still a thing, or is that just, you know, you can talk in your house freely, but if you want to express yourself on any of these platforms, then that's when the censorship comes into play?
And there's always been a battle with freedom of speech. You know, they say that we're free to speak, but then they always find different ways to kind of make sure that it's one perspective in people's minds, or maybe two perspectives, because they got to have one side saying one thing and another side and another thing saying something else, so that we can be fighting. But they're going to allow maybe two perspectives, but anything outside of that is not going to be allowed.
Which is unfortunate, because how do you grow with such a limited perspective?
But obviously, we know that our system here isn't interested in our growth. But let's go ahead and play this last video.
Mr. President, one of the things that I found has the broadest bipartisan support these days is the feeling that this provision, Section 230, has been stretched way beyond its original intention, and people feel that on both sides of the aisle. This was adopted 25 years ago to protect the fledgling industry, and its purpose was to allow websites that were serving as essentially bulletin boards for diverse third-party content coming on, to say that you're not responsible for the content of that third-party information. And it also tried to encourage these companies to take down things like child pornography or human trafficking advertising and things by saying, if you act to remove this kind of objectionable material, you won't be liable for taking it down. Now it's been completely stretched to allow what have become really behemoths who control a lot of the flow of information in our society to engage in censorship of that information and to act as editors and publishers of the material. So when they put on their own content, like fact check content onto other people's content, and when they curate their collection, and when they start censoring particular content, including in many cases at the direction of foreign governments like communist China, they become publishers, and they shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of shield that was set up earlier. Now, this executive order is a very strong step toward addressing this problem. It sets up a rulemaking procedure that will eventually be under the FCC to try to get back to the original interpretation and understanding of Section 230. It also empowers the Attorney General to work with state attorneys general to come up with model legislation that addresses this at the state level. And we're preparing federal legislation, which we will be sending over shortly for review at the Office of Management and Budget. So this is an important step to get back to the original understanding. You know, there's a bit of a bait and switch that's occurred in our society. These companies grew because they held themselves out as public forums, as free public forums where a variety of voices and diverse voices could come on and be heard. That's how they grew. That's how they attracted the eyeballs. That's why people joined them. But now that they have become these very powerful networks of eyeballs, now that they've grown by holding themselves out as free public forums, they've now switched. And they are using that market power to force particular viewpoints. And that's wrong. And it has to be addressed not only through this executive order, but I think litigation going forward and by further action on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, do you have any questions for the Attorney General?
So again, you know, I don't agree with everything coming out of the White House. Recently, Trump has been heard to say some pretty dumb stuff with regards to, you know, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, things of that nature. I'm just encouraging people be discerning about how you interpret what you're seeing, because personally, if the censorship that we're seeing, the bill, I think he said Bill 230 that he was talking about, is basically about not having, as he said, you know, really objectionable stuff like pornography, child pornography, human trafficking stuff, you know, that type of stuff should have to be taken down. But however, just sharing a viewpoint on something shouldn't be seen as dangerous. If you can say that some viewpoints could be shown, but other viewpoints are banned, to me, that has overstepped the lines on what a public forum is supposed to do. If it's public, then people should be able to talk about whatever they want. Now, to censor things such as people acting like idiots on social media, and you shouldn't be cursing each other out on social media, and you want to try to moderate or mediate some of the confrontations that happen on social media, I can even understand that. But it doesn't have to happen in a way of, again, censoring people just for saying, you know, certain trigger words or trigger phrases. And just to make sure that this video doesn't get banned, I'm not going to say what those are, but you know, there's certain things that have been dismissed as, oh, it's a conspiracy with regards to this coronavirus that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube or Facebook.
It's just a very interesting place to be in life, because we're living in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's like you get penalized for both here for just being, you know, speaking your mind and exactly how you feel, and you know, to reacting to how you feel also. It's a very interesting time that we're in right now. So we'll see how everything plays out.
So again, we titled this "Fear of a Zombie Apocalypse" because what I'm really afraid of right now is people just continuing to get more and more unstable mentally and more kind of easily manipulated by their emotions to where you're not really even functioning as a thinking human being anymore. But we have to make sure that we keep our level head, that we keep our composure so that we're doing what's intelligent for ourselves. We're going to have to sign off right now because we're out of time for the day. If you watch this all the way through to the end, thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe and like our page so you can see more of this content that we're coming out with.
Also comment too. We would love to hear from you about what you heard today. If it helped, exactly what you feel, about it. Freedom of speech.
Yes, speak your mind, dog.
Yes.
All right. Everyone take care.
All right. Peace.
Peace.